All right, so when we left off, we were talking about the end of the convention. Now, the new Constitution has to go to the states for ratification. How many states do you need? 9. But you really want all of them, correct? Okay. So what we have here are those that support the new Constitution because it creates a federal system. How? Define federalism.
It's a separation between national, state, and local government.
Okay, you're getting better. Sharing of power. Sharing of power between the three. Okay. Because some powers are concurrent, as we'll learn. Some of them are unique to each, like coining money is unique to national government, but building roads is concurrent. Both do it. Okay. So anyhow, so those in favor are Federalists. Those opposed, anti-Federalists. Okay. So let the argument begin. This is really an argument of ideas. All right. And last time we met, I left off with two of the biggest issues that the anti-Federalists had with this new Constitution. Do you remember? There's no Bill of Rights, and the national government, central government is going to become too powerful. Were they right on the latter? Some would say yes. Some would say our government needs to do more. Okay. Probably the loudest voice against this new Constitution is one we know, and that's Patrick Henry. Okay? He felt, as we just said, that the national government would become too powerful. He also said, in addition to that, that popular government could only exist in small territories where one this large could only be held together by force. Now, if you look at the colonies from New Hampshire in the north and to Georgia in the south, okay, the 13 states that we begin with, that's a long distance. That in and of itself is a large territory compared to, say, Europe. I mean, it's a long country at this point. And I think they have an idea it's going to get bigger. Wouldn't you think? I don't think they're to the point of manifest destiny yet, but now, is this true? Can we only be governed by force today in the United States that we have today?
No.
No what?
We can't just it's a social contract, right? It's
Is
not
it?
force theory.
Okay, it's a social contract. What happens if you don't pay your taxes?
Then you're forced to do it, but I mean, Mr. Ebright, I think there's a difference between governed by force and what we're doing here. You know what I'm saying?
What about if you want to build something on your property and the EPA comes in, your private property that you've owned, and you want to build something on it, the EPA comes in and says you can't build that.
What are you building, Mr. Ebright?
Okay, let me give you an example. When my parents...
In the marshland? Because that's a no-no.
See, there you go. Yeah, what are called wetlands. Yeah. Well, let me tell you this. You know where Target, Newmarket Square, and all that? That area north of Target was considered a wetland. It was a wetland. We have many migratory bird species that come through Kansas every year.
It's definitely a wetland.
Have any of you guys ever been out to Cheyenne Bottoms out by Great Bend? Heard of Cheyenne Bottoms? You never heard of this? Guys, it's pretty cool. This is kind of a side story here. My wife's cousin graduated from the University of Missouri, and I don't know what you call bird people, but people that study birds.
Ooh, I think it's like ornithologists.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it right.
That's impressive, Jack. Well, anyhow, so my wife's talking to her cousin. She says, well, we're coming to Great Bend to go bird watching. And so for a weekend, I went with my wife and her cousin bird watching at Cheyenne Bottoms outside of Great Bend. Okay? It's a large wetland.
Wait,
Yeah.
swivel is not plugged in.
Oh, crap. You think it matters?
I don't even know.
I mean, it just charges your
No, it is not.
The cloud, so the government can steal the footage.
Well, we'll find out. It's been recorded.
Okay, good.
Maybe it doesn't have sound.
Oh, jeez.
No,
That would be bad.
If
I
there's
don't
a
know.
microphone in the,
Yeah.
We'll find out. We'll
No,
find
no,
out.
See, this microphone probably wouldn't work without it being plugged in, but
yeah.
It's going out of my phone.
Yeah, it's not.
All right.
we'll find out. But anyhow, I went bird watching, okay? And there's a certain time of year you can go to Cheyenne Bottoms, guys, and I'm telling you, there are hundreds of different bird species that migrate through Kansas, okay? And this is kind of, I think it's interesting. You guys know those herons, those gray herons? You see them, some of the lakes around here? The big ones, yeah. See, I grew up in Florida, guys, and so I would see those herons in Florida, and I moved to Kansas. I'm like, I thought those were beach birds.
Dude, we have seagulls.
We have magpies.
Kansas.
The ones with the little legs, the skinny legs, long legs. There's a family that lives out at the baseball field. Okay, and they're there every year. And they've had generations since I've been coaching here for 20 years. Generations of those magpies. And there's a family that lives out at the baseball field. And they run around the infield. I've got pictures of one standing on top of the pitcher's rubber. Okay, they're cute little birds. And I'm like, why are these in Kansas? They're beach birds, magpies.
Magpies?
Magpie?
Are
Pies?
they pipes or pies?
Magpies.
Pies.
Yeah. You're okay.
All right. So anyhow, I thought that was an interesting story. But Cheyenne Bottoms is kind of a cool place to go if you're into nature and that sort of thing. What's wrong?
I thought you were going to get to a point of like wetland.
Oh yeah. So anyhow.
I was like, that's it.
So, well, here's part of it. Money talks. So when they wanted to build New Market Square, obviously the government made the decision to look the other way when it came to building New Market Square, north of Target, which was a wetland.
Why don't they just irrigate it?
Did they not that, or did they not build it up at all when they made it?
Well, I'm sure they had to for flood, Yeah, but you're not supposed to alter the environment.
Marcus, have you ever been
For
to
sure.
Target on a rainy day? There's birds the next day.
Yeah.
All everywhere.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They remember.
Oh, well, no, like there's still a little field.
Oh,
And they
okay.
all
He's
go
talking
there.
about the field. Not
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So they saved a little spot for
Well,
them.
yeah, there's part of the.
No, I think it
place
just
next
hasn't
to
been
the field.
developed yet. 'Cause
Yeah, we'll
they
see.
keep pushing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
Suburbia.
should- So we shouldn't build anything?
Suburbia.
Okay, so my parents bought a piece of property. Listen, my parents bought a piece of property on a bay in Florida where they wanted to build their dream home. Okay? The next door neighbor had a dock that went out into the bay. The neighbor next to them, dock out into the bay. Now, there was no house on this property at this point, so this would be the first house on this property ever. And my dad wanted to build a dock out into the bay so you could put the boat in there and all that. EPA said no. Because the grass that is next to the water, okay, I mean, there's a little bit of beach, but there's sawgrass. They said the sawgrass is endangered, so you can't build a dock over the top of it. So we never built a dock.
Why don't they just move the grass?
This is where you ask for forgiveness, not permission.
I'm sure.
Wait, why didn't you just poison the grass?
Huh?
Like, oh, there's no more
Why
grass.
just move the grass?
Yeah, just uproot it.
What?
No, the EPA does satellite imagery of the coastline, so they know if you disturb it or change it. They know. Yeah.
Must be right. Why do we care about grass?
Yeah.
Then I guess like what's their point with like saying we have to save this grass?
Save this grass.
Well, the grass in one way does help with beach erosion. Okay. But other than that, I'm not sure what purpose it serves.
Okay, so they
Yeah,
don't
but-
want it to erode the beaches. Sure.
But they could have left the grass and built it on top. That's what they said.
But what if it died?
No, they said you can't build it over.
No,
the
no,
grass.
I know.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Marcus, the EPA does this sometimes.
Okay, so that's
I know. I'm not saying everything.
generally, guys, when it comes to property rights, and this does happen to people, where the government has this power to dictate. Okay? Now, one of the things other things Patrick Henry said, that the strong executive would become like a monarch. Now, on page 43 in your book, guys, all of these are listed. I'm just put a few in the notes here. Have we had any presidents that have become like a king? Andrew Jackson, huh? Franklin Roosevelt, elected 4 times.
I wouldn't call him a king.
A ton of executive orders too.
But
He did do a lot of executive orders.
Barack Obama.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Barack
Okay,
Barack
so
Obama.
here's the thing. This I don't think has come true. But he felt it would be a danger to individual rights and representative government. He's right, if that happened. But the checks that we have in place prevent that. Okay, it works. The executive works.
So did they have those checks in place when they were making
When they wrote the Constitution.
when they wrote the federal?
Yep. That's that, and we'll get into all that. Okay, so it lacks a Bill of Rights, and this is a big one. Okay. Now on the next slide, everybody good here? On the next slide, the Federalist response to this is interesting, and I want to know if you buy their argument or not. Okay? The Federalists argued that the separate branches would check each other and no one branch would become too powerful.
Well, that was
Okay?
a counter argument to what? Oh.
So that you wouldn't get a strong executive or a monarch.
Next one's Bill of Rights.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a sec. Okay? So, and that should be TOO powerful. Sorry.
What can you do?
I could go back and change it.
Yeah. Well,
Or not.
too late now.
I'm in a school, I should do it right.
Who really cares?
Oh, it's
You're
not
getting the
following
point
you.
across.
It's okay, I'll be right back. Can I get the scroll?
Subscribers don't like when you leave the
This is called a cellular device. Where's she at?
Too powerful. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Based on what you guys know about our government, you know the 3 branches. 2018, which of the 3 branches, stop writing. Which of the 3 branches is the most powerful? Hang on. We'll take a poll. Okay? So, you got 3 branches. Okay.
Shut up, Tristan.
Yes.
I've been trying to figure it out. Who's the guy in the bottom left and bottom right?
Okay. Hamilton on the left,
That's Hammy? Okay.
Madison in the middle,
All right.
John Jay on the right.
John J. what?
John Jay.
John Jay.
John J.
John, John,
J.
Jay.
John Jay, like full stop, Tristan.
Now, which of the 3 is the most powerful? Legislative, raise your hand.
The judicial.
Hey, would you shut?
Don't spread bias. Actually, no.
Poisoning the well.
Yeah,
Executive.
poisoning the well.
Judicial. Okay. Now, guys, this is just conjecture. This is opinion. Okay. Which branch get to serve for life? Which officials are not elected?
Not
The
elected,
judicial.
popular. Yeah.
They're not elected.
I wouldn't call them.
So you have people that are not elected that get to serve for life, that get to determine whether the other 2 branches are within the Constitution or outside of the Constitution. The judicial branch, which began as the weakest of the 3, many people's opinion would be the strongest of the 3, because the decisions that the Supreme Court makes changes culture. It changes our nation. Okay, you talk about things like abortion, life and death issues. Okay, they talk about things like marriage. Okay, all different sorts of issues. Okay, right now the Supreme Court is hearing a case on whether your religious rights outweigh discrimination when it comes to bakers, right? Bakers making a cake for a gay wedding. They're also deciding whether, remember when we talked about this in history, we talked about right-to-work states and union shops, where if you work in a state where they have where they're union shops, you have to pay the dues, you have to pay and join the union. They're going to decide on that this term. Okay, so these really impact. Now, I would say the weakest of the three is the one that the founders wanted to be the strongest, and that's the legislative branch. How many members are there in the United States House of Representatives?
535.
How many members in the United States House of Representatives? 435. How often are they up for re-election? Every 2 years. Okay? These people don't like to make tough decisions because they want to get re-elected. They don't want to cause anybody any pain, and they want somebody else to get the blame when things go wrong. Most likely, the president. Everybody knows who the president is. Most people don't even know who their members of Congress are. So they willingly allow the president to have more power so they don't have to make tough decisions. And so the legislative branch in the modern era has become the weakest in the views of many. And the bully pulpit of the presidency, that Teddy Roosevelt called it, okay, has become stronger. Yeah?
In your opinion, how do we fix that? How do we fix the weakness of the legislative branch?
Well, there's certain things you can do to decrease the power of the judicial, like put in terms for Supreme Court, or have them elected.
How long would you make the terms?
I'd probably say 6 or 8 years for Supreme Court.
I don't know. I don't like people giving people the power to elect the judicial branch.
We could leave it to Congress. Okay, so like in Kansas, here's what happens. In Kansas, which I don't like, the Kansas Bar Association gives the governor a list of names, and he has to pick from that list of names. The Kansas Bar Association gets. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Okay, because the Kansas Bar is tilted.
I mean, what is it like notoriously?
No, it's tilted to the left. I mean, yeah. So whoever the Republican governor might be at the time is stuck with just these names.
But here's the thing about, like, in the federal government, if we elect a majority of Republican senators and representatives, and a Republican president, does that mean that they should then be able to flush the judicial?
Well, it's kind of how it works now.
I know, but I mean, I'm saying that's wrong. That's not what the founders.
So what's the? I mean, besides allowing the people to do it, what's the alternative?
Whoever was appointed then, I mean, just stays. Maybe
For life.
Yeah.
Now, I get the reasoning behind it because they're above having to run for office. They're above politics. Once they're on the bench, they don't have
They're
to.
supposed to be like
Impartial.
John Adams here.
Yeah. I believe in the
That's
law.
That's their purpose. And yeah, they
But what if you get judges that don't do that?
Well, I mean, you always get judges that don't.
Right.
But I'm saying I think it would be it was detrimental to do that in the way of elections, because then like so much could change without anyone checking anything. Like you could make an unconstitutional law just because you made all the judges in your favor.
Right.
They won't say anything about it.
Right. No, I mean, definitely there are
I mean, they need to
issues.
be
Yeah.
protective of the Constitution more than they are of their political party.
Right. And we're going to study that a little bit more when we get to the Federalist Papers. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to agree with the point Tristan made. I think because if we open up like electing judges, I think we're probably not going to end up with a lot of very impartial or like moderate. What we see is just like the people who like, I mean, As we've seen in this recent election, like with Trump, is like the people who are most like outspoken about theirs. Those are the people who get elected, and they may not be the most impartial.
Right.
And the whole
I mean, the
idea
fact of the matter is, I mean, you've got justices. Right now, there's 9 justices, right? 4 of them are liberal. 4 of them are conservative. One, Anthony Kennedy, is seen as the moderate.
Which is cool.
We don't have 9 moderates. We don't have 9 justices that really abide by a strict construction of the Constitution. Okay, we have 4 that are feel free to interpret that document however they feel is best for society, not what the original intent was of the founders. Okay, and I happen to think, and this has nothing to do with sex, but I happen to think that Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and these folks were smarter than Sonia Sotomayor or Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Stephen Breyer, okay, or even Clarence Thomas. I think that those men were smarter than the justices we have on the Supreme Court. And so that we should stay, because they studied this. They understood human nature. You know, there's this argument between the living, breathing Constitution and the Constitution itself and what it meant and what it stood for. And it was based upon principles that we've studied in this class. It's based upon truth. It's based upon Locke's view of social contract. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great argument that we can have, and it's a good one to talk about. I would say that, you know, we need to hold the legislative branch feet to the fire and tell them, don't abdicate your responsibilities to the president. It's just like we haven't declared war since 1941. Yet we've been in several wars. Who's abdicating the responsibility? Congress is the only body that can declare war. Yet we haven't done it in 70 years. They're abdicating the responsibility. No, they did not. Mm-mm. Okay, so back to the Bill of Rights for a second. Do you buy this argument that in the Constitution all the powers are already listed, and none of those powers grant them the power to do away with your God-given rights? So they'll never do it. So we don't need a Bill of Rights because they don't have the power to do away with your rights.
I mean, that's what they wanted and what they intended, but we needed the Bill of Rights because obviously
we did, yeah. Now, state constitutions, many of them had a Bill of Rights in them. So those would protect people. You don't need one in the national constitution because they don't have the powers.
Human error.
Right, but then Patrick Henry would argue that that is thereby.
Yeah, Patrick Henry would say hogwash.
Be overruled by the federal government because they can do that.
Right. So, think about this just for a second. Hey, this is a failed argument right here on the part of the Federalists, and they're going to lose this argument. Think about this. Some of those state constitutions had official state religions that you could not hold office unless you were a member of a certain religion. So, what about your freedom of religion? You don't have it in those states. And that's one of the things they realized is that, yeah, these guys are probably right. Patrick Henry and these other anti-federalists are probably right. We do need a Bill of Rights. We do need to list those in black and white. And thank God they did. Thank God they resisted this and said, no, we demand a Bill of Rights. Okay, because otherwise, do you think we'd still have those freedoms, all of them?
No.
Probably not. And a lot of them, those Bill of Rights freedoms that we have, and we're going to get into them, have been temporarily taken away in some places.
Suspension of habeas corpus.
Okay. I'll come back to that. Okay, so ratification. Now, many of them felt that it favored the big states. Even though we had the Senate, Delaware, a small state, is going to be the first to ratify on December 7th, 1787. You guys remember when you were little kids and they started coming out with the state quarters?
Yeah.
Which was the first quarter? First state quarter?
Probably the
Delaware. It was the first quarter they minted with the state on the back. Because it was the first state.
They made a long quarter.
Now the Senate, the small state, said would protect the states. But the passage of the 16th and 17th Amendment that we've talked about in here has altered that to some extent. Direct income tax of the people rather than taxing the states, and direct election of the senators by the people instead of the states. It alters our framework. Now, they're going to get 9 states from December 7th to June 21st, so a little over 6 months. They're going to get 9 states. But Virginia and New York are really divided on this issue. In Virginia, that's where Patrick Henry lives. That's also where James Madison lives. Okay? New York is divided on this. Okay? That's where Hamilton lives. And so these 3 men, Hamilton, Madison, and Jay, are going to start writing a series of articles, essays, and have them published in the newspapers. And these will actually become known as what? It says it right there. The Federalist Papers. Guys, these are probably the 3rd most important documents in American history. Behind the Declaration, the Constitution, come these papers. Because they explain the Constitution. Okay? And we're going to be reading 5 of those Federalist Papers. Now, you won't read the full text. I have excerpts in your book. And we're going to do that Monday. I'll assign that Monday for the discussion on Tuesday. And there's some really interesting topics in these papers. Some of them are dry and ramble. But some of them speak to the importance of this new Constitution and explain how it will function, how it will work, and why. Now, they don't use their names on this. They don't say this essay was written by by James Madison. This essay was written by Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton was kind of a lightning rod. There were people that loved and adored Hamilton, and there were people that didn't like him. So they didn't want to attach their names to these. So the pen name that they used, anyone? Good trivia question. Publius. Publius. Right here, look. That's what it looked like. Philo Publius. The Federalist.
What is that?
Collection of essays written in favor of the new Constitution by a citizen of New York.
Does
Publius.
Publius mean anything?
That's Latin,
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
which most people study.
Which means.
I don't know. Look it up.
It means.
Let's use Google Translate.
Alright, I'll Google
Yeah,
it.
but what's mean?
I'll Google it.
I think it means just like public, like John Public,
The second John.
like John Doe, John Public, John. I forget how you.
It's not Publius. You can assume no.
Okay, these essays did have an impact. Okay, I'll tell you another story since this 4th hour and a half time.
Alright, let's do it.
So I was on vacation with the family. We were in the Outer Banks, North Carolina. Any of you guys been to the Outer Banks, North Carolina?
Oh yeah, it's a cool place.
Yeah.
And the traffic.
Huge. Oh, it's horrible. The sand dunes, right? Big sand dunes.
Uh-huh.
I went to South Carolina.
Okay. Hilton Head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So anyhow, I go to play golf. You know, it's a vacation. I'm going to go play golf.
Yeah.
So nobody in the family wanted to go. So I went to this course, and they pair you up with a guy at a resort. You know, so they pair me up with this guy. He's a young guy, he's a student. He goes to James Madison University. Okay, I'm like, hey, I know that guy. I teach all about James Madison. He said, mandatory reading for all incoming freshmen, the Federalist Papers at James Madison University. Good times. And you're going to get to read some of that. Okay. I won't make you read the whole thing because I'm not going to make you do something that I'm not willing to do myself.
Yeah, I haven't read
Jack, you got an answer?
Oh, yeah. So, Publius is just a name back in, from like, Rome, obviously.
Right.
But back in Rome, names were like super important. So like, if you had like a name like Augustus, that means you were part of a higher class.
Uh-huh.
But Publius was a name used by both the lower and upper class.
Okay.
So it would basically, people would know, like, it alludes to the fact that they are part of the whole or everyone.
Good.
When using the name Publius.
Good information right there, gentlemen, ladies. Okay. So, 3 states, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Virginia, demand that if we're going to ratify, we want a Bill of Rights. And so they promised, the Federalists promised, that the first Congress would pass a Bill of Rights. Now, what's a little bit ironic and interesting here is that one of these Federalists, James Madison, would go on to become the first Speaker of the House, he would help author the same Bill of Rights that he felt were not necessary. Who was the first Speaker of the House of Congress, the House of Representatives? James Madison was. John Jay would go on to become what? First Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, of which he would quit. Because the Supreme Court, when we started, had almost no power. In fact, the Supreme Court guys didn't have their own building. They were stuck in the basement, the unfinished basement of the Capitol building. That's how much they thought of the Supreme Court. And John Jay said, I'm done with this. And he went on to become governor of New York. John Jay, J-A-Y. Oh! And, of course, Alexander Hamilton is going to go on to become the first what? Secretary of Treasury. The first Congress is going to meet in where? New York, March 4th, 1789, and shortly thereafter, George Washington will be sworn in as President of the United States on August 30th, 1789.
Was Washington ever president of the Congress?
No. He went home. He deserved to go home for a little bit. He went back to Mount Vernon after the war.
Berman's green.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah, when Washington left for the Second Continental Congress, he told his wife he'd be back for Christmas. It was like 8 Christmases later.
What?
Well, he became commander-in-chief. I mean, right after. You know, they sent him to.
Didn't she come with him?
Did she meet him on the campaign during the war?
Oh, I thought commander-in-chief. I thought you were talking about, the president.
Yeah, commander of the Continental Army. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Okay.
Imagine that.
All right, so we're not done. Next thing in your notes. Okay? You ready? Basics of the Constitution. Basics of the Constitution.
It was big.
What's that?
It was big.
Was it big? No, it's tiny.
No, it was big.
talk about?
It was.
There are 7 articles in the U.S. Constitution. 7 articles. The first 3 are the 3 branches of government. Okay, and looking at this little pocket Constitution, okay, 16 pages, 16 little pages.
That's big.
Little
8,
font.
8. The first 8 pages are the Article 1, which is the legislative branch. Or if you look at this outline up here of the Constitution, the first 2 columns are Article 1, legislative branch. The other 6 take up the other 2 columns. Okay? Wow. Right. So, Article 1, legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. We are going to study those in depth in this class, the second half of this class. Okay, second 9 weeks or what have you. Okay? Those will go pretty quick. They're really kind of black and white, cut and dry, so forth. Okay, so we're going to jump to Article 4 of the Constitution. Article 4 of the Constitution. And you could label that as interstate and federal relations. Interstate relations between states and relationships between states and the federal government. Article 4. Interstate and federal relations. And there are several clauses that we'll discuss in Article 4, and I think we'll just hit the first one today. Okay? And that first important clause in Article 4 of the Constitution is called the Full Faith and Credit Clause. Full Faith and Credit Clause. Did I install that? No. I really wanted one bigger and then take that back a little bit so the notes were really big. I used to do them on my board and I could make them bigger than this screen. That's why I have this white stuff here.
But then what?
Well, I asked for a big screen. And then I showed up and they gave me that. I mean, it's not bad, but...
Yeah, but you said you used to do them on your folder.
Yeah. See this light white thing here?
And you stopped doing it on your folder?
Yeah.
You want a bigger screen?
I want a screen like the one in Fox's room.
She has big screen.
She's got a big screen. Okay, anyhow. Full faith and credit clause. You got that? One state must recognize another state's official documents. One state must recognize another state's official documents. So if you've ever wondered why you can use your Kansas driver's license in any of the other 49 states, it's because of the full faith and credit clause in the Constitution. Marriage licenses, death certificates, contracts between two people must be recognized by other states.
What guns?
Gun laws? Now that's different.
No, if you're issued a gun.
Nope. Gun permits do not cross state lines. You have to, and we'll get into that. That's called privileges and immunities. We'll get into that next. But stay with the
Right.
full faith and credit. Okay? So I want to use an example here as kind of a teaching moment. I was married in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now, as we've kind of talked about before in this class, Louisiana is one of the, if you were looking for corruption in government, is one of the more corrupt governments, state governments that we know. Okay? So even though there is corruption in Baton Rouge, Kansas has to recognize my marriage license. They don't have a choice. That brings up a question, doesn't it?
What does corruption have to do with marriage license?
Well, I mean, is it a legitimate government? What?
I guess, like, why...
Jack, I was just kind of kidding around. I wasn't being... real serious. I was just kind of giving an example.
Keep coming. But you're serious.
Okay. Massachusetts was the first state to allow for gay marriage.
Oh, and that was not recognized, let me tell you.
So, states like Kansas, Alabama, and others said, whoa,
I was about to ask.
we don't want to recognize those marriages in this state. Okay? And so, this is in the 90s. It was a Republican Congress, signed into law by a Democrat president, Bill Clinton, the Defense of Marriage Act, otherwise known as DOMA, was passed and put into law, saying that states did not have to recognize gay marriages from other states. Now, right off the bat, if you know the basics of the Constitution and the basics of the Full Faith and Credit Clause, what could you say about this law? Yeah, Congress knew when they passed it, it was unconstitutional. Clinton knew when he signed it, it was unconstitutional. Yet they did it anyways. Why?
Because they really cared about their public image.
Well, you might say some of it's politics, but it's what the people wanted. Okay? So, how come this wasn't overturned by the Supreme Court within 6 months? Here's something you need to understand about challenging federal laws. There has to be a victim. Somebody has to sue. So it would take a Massachusetts couple getting married, moving to another state, and asking for that state to recognize that license. When it comes to, say they got a job with the government, and they wanted their marriage partner to get benefits, health benefits, through the insurance plan. Well, with DOMA, the state would not have to cover the spouse of the same-sex marriage. Does that make sense? And then they would have to sue. And then you're going to have the Supreme Court want to hear that case. And if 4 of the justices of the 9 want to hear a case, they'll take a case. If you don't have 4, then you don't have a case. So in order for this to be adjudicated, you need a victim and you need it to go through the trial process. Okay? This law stood for more than a decade. And everybody knew it was unconstitutional. Okay? So this is one of those things. The Supreme Court's not going to act on this or act on anything until they think the American people are ready for them to act on it. So just last year, 2015, maybe 16, basically the Supreme Court said that the right of same-sex couples to marry exists. Now, where did you find that in the Constitution? Good boy. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law for all citizens. Now let me ask you a question, Jack. Let's say I have 2 girlfriends.
Oh, are you Mormon?
And I want to marry both of them. And they're okay with this. They both want to marry me. That is called what?
Polygamy.
Polygamy.
That's outlawed.
And it is outlawed. But could you say under the Full Faith and Credit Clause, Jack, that polygamy should be covered by that?
I mean, does the state legalize it?
Whoa.
Whoa!
No state has ever, not even Utah, I don't even think recognize that law.
Maybe they should.
I mean, if they were to, then yes.
Why do we even have to wait for the states to do it? It's a federal protection.
I mean,
Yeah.
it won't be legally recognized, but you can marry 2 women and
Why wouldn't it be legally recognized?
There was
Church
a
of
whole
Latter-day
show about how a
Saints.
guy did it. How he had 4 wives.
Isn't he in
Yeah,
jail
You
now?
had a ton of kids
I don't
too,
know.
like 100
I
something.
don't know. I never watched it.
I watched
Well,
a
why
couple
wouldn't
episodes.
why shouldn't it be recognized by the government then?
I mean, under the example that the Supreme Court used for gay marriage, that could extend to a lot of different situations.
I think it's because people don't want to rewrite it, what you're trying to
It'll come. It's going to happen.
I honestly don't.
And they will be left with no, yeah, I mean, it's none of your business, is it? No.
I mean, I don't know. I just feel like, prove that it's like really damaging to people. If you can, then yeah.
I mean, there's proof that if they want to damage their family, that's up to them. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So,
Christian's full libertarian.
I will cover more of Article 4 on Monday, and then I'm going to sign the Federalist Papers that are in your book, okay, for reading Monday night, and we're going to have a discussion on Tuesday. I don't think we're going to have a test next week. Okay? It'll be the following week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Okay? I have graded quite a few of the essays, and the ones I've graded are in Power School. Hey, make sure to like and subscribe.